Thank you for joining us on the program as we highlight the top stories we followed in the course of the week. It is at that point in time when events show that rape and gender-based violence are an epidemic in society as a global pandemic. Owa, Tina and Barakat are among the most recent heartbreaking symbols in places where women and girls are largely unsafe, whether at home, in schools, and now in places of worship. Well, it's now 100 days plus one since Nigeria recorded the index case of coronavirus in the country at a time when the world became more connected in isolation. With more than 12,000 cases recorded, concerns are high as life is almost back to normal for many amidst an ongoing ease of lockdown. Now, a group converged on Lagos Police Command to demand protection from the force and declare a state of emergency on the epidemic called sexual and gender-based violence. Sarah Ayeko reports.
Before the age of 18, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 10 boys go through the horrifying experience of being sexually abused in Nigeria. That's according to a report by the United Nations Children Fund in 2015. Since the lockdown in March 2020, Action Aid Nigeria has recorded 253 cases of gender-based violence in Bauchi, Cross River, Enugu, Kebbi and Kwara states. But the reported cases of sexual violence and murder of girls and young women in Nigeria in less than a month shows that there are more cases than the data recorded. This protest against sexual and gender-based violence is not the first or the last we will see on the streets of Lagos and across Nigeria. This march and anger is directed at the Nigeria Police Force.
Protecting us. We do not feel safe with you, and that is not your job. Yes. We do not feel safe anywhere. Yes. You cannot go to the station to report a case and then policemen shaming and blaming the victims.
The stories of rape and sexual harassment are all too familiar, but it seems justice is rarely served on perpetrators.
What is your number? Who are you to ask anybody in pain what she's doing there? Justice is not just ice. This station has somebody who will usually ask questions. Please let the person come and ask us why we are here.
It took the police about 15 minutes to come out and address the protesters.
Standing under the crushing sun to shout will not solve the problem.
Very unfortunate because the DCP admin that came to address us, Officer Etim, has validated all the concerns that we have about police attitudes towards women. He was very defensive, he was very abrasive, there was no empathy in his voice. We're asking for an understanding that there's a problem. So I'm really very upset. Not only upset about the issue, but upset that the person representing the police in Lagos State has acted in a manner that validates why we have a problem.
Nigeria's criminal code recommends life imprisonment for those convicted of rape and 14 years for attempted rape. The names of Nigerian women and girls that have been sexually harassed and killed in the past weeks keeps resonating from the social media to the streets. But it also echoes the names of those that are not known, that are being killed by the culture of silence. The people are hoping that in days to come, justice will be served. Sarah Ayeko, TVC.
Well, let's quickly bring in our panel to discuss this issue further. I have joining me from Abuja, Buki Shonibara, gender rights activist and founder, Girl Child Africa, and I have TVC News editor, Uzonna Onoye. Good to have you both on the program tonight. So let's begin with you now, Buki. Indeed, in a space of 1 week, we had the cases where girls were being violated and sexually abused. We had the case of Tina, we had Uwa, and we had Barakat. And now many are asking, why are we having this seemingly worrying trend? What are your thoughts on the rising cases of sexual violence in Nigeria today?
Thank you. I think the first thing we need to look at, which answers directly your question, is why is it that despite the outcry regarding rape and sexual abuse, it has still continued? And, you know, when we do an analysis of why it has continued, first is the fact that we have a culture that permit rape to continue in Nigeria. And I will look at that culture that corporatifies. I would use the word the corporatification of the female body, where men, the irresponsible one, look at the female body and see it as their property, such that when you believe that something is your property, regardless of whether you're married to the person or not, you believe you can have unfettered access to that. That is first, that culture that corporatifies the female body. The second is, that state level lack of reporting and referral pathway. So when we have someone that has been abused in, let's say, Ibadan, like the case of Barakat, should we not have such kind of outcry on social media? Would we have heard about that particular case? But when we go to several states, a lot of people do not know where to report to. And even when they go and they report, we don't have that kind of justice system. Look at the records. We don't have so many cases of rape that has been successfully prosecuted. We also have the issue of stigmatization. You know what happened to Busola Dakolo. The fact that she came out, she was called names, she was stigmatized. So there is that culture of silence that has continued. And even when people have been sexually abused, they cannot come out. And even when people come out and they go to law enforcement agents, like what happened in Lagos, you are blamed, you are asked, what were you wearing? But if you keep asking what are you wearing, is that the same thing that we asked a child that was in diapers, or Barakat that was in hijab, or older women who are also being sexually abused with their wrinkled body and everything. So I think that the fact that we have some laws that are good, but there are no punishment, is also one of the reasons why this has continued. And even when people report, there is interference with justice. You have family member going to beg to say this person has come to plead with us. You have the family members of the perpetrators also pleading to say, please forgive us. And then we also have, there is absence of modernized investigation. Look at what happened to Uwa. If nobody is able to see those people that perpetrated that act, can we indeed rely on our forensics to look at things like the fire extinguisher that was used to be able to trace? And you can't have forensic without tying it to detail. So if you look at all of these factors, it tells you why rape has continued, despite the fact that we keep crying and shouting about it.
Indeed, quite a lot you've said out there, Buki Shonebare, but let me quickly come to you, Uzona. From what she said so far, there's so many things so many factors come to play here in terms of dealing with this sexual-based violence and, of course, gender-based violence against women. She mentioned poor justice system, poor forensic analysis, and a culture of silence. But if you were to put all this together, what is the best option that we have as women, and of course those of us who are fighting to have our voices heard? What is the best way to have these issues put behind us if we're to deal with this matter holistically?
First of all, I would like to point out that gender-based violence is not being suffered by women alone. There are young children, boys, who are molested and violated by much older women, particularly when they are kept in their care. So it's something that we need to take a holistic look at if we need to find a permanent solution. That's one. Two is that there is a societal burden on whoever is violated, whoever the victim in any case is, societal burden of what were you doing? Where were you? Just like the questions Buki had raised, they want you now to become the victim proper, and not give you any window of getting justice. That societal burden makes it difficult for people to come out. Even when they have evidence, it makes it difficult for them to come out. Stigmatization is a problem. We need to look at this from all angles. It's not just one aspect. Now, the people that came out, how easy is it for them to get justice? You go to court. The process of proving a rape case is very, very, very difficult. And that is why most people that are taken to court over rape walk away free, because it is difficult to prove. And when you are tortured and at the end of the day you're not sure you're going to get justice, many people will want to keep quiet, just bear their pain and die in silence. So it requires a whole lot of process. One is that the law of over rape had to be reviewed. The process of proving a rape case had to be reviewed to be in tandem with realities of our time. Let me tell you the truth. If not that Uwa was killed in a church after being raped, and the lady in Oyo was also killed, if it was just mere rape, I use the word mere, not because I don't understand the sensitive nature of the issue, but when you compare it with murder, it's a different thing. If it was just that they were raped and they were not killed, many people wouldn't have heard about it. But the killing was what stirred up the emotion. Now, there has to be a societal reappraisal of what rape actually signifies. It is not just about having carnal knowledge of an individual. It is doing such without the person's consent. Particularly, it's worse when that person has not even gotten up to the age of consent. I mean, he or she doesn't have the right at that point. He's not in control of his decisions to say yes or no. And then it is difficult. The person is tortured further by putting the person through the process of proving what were you doing, proving your case. Mm-hmm. So if that process of proof is not reviewed to be in tandem with today's reality, it will continue to linger and the problem will continue to linger.
Now, okay, let's look at the possibilities of stiffer laws now. There are talks that perhaps if we have strong laws against men who rape young girls, some are saying castration, for instance, would have deterrence in this case. What are your thoughts? Do you think that is the way out of this, the options we have available for us?
I think, it's one of the options that people have considered. And while I agree that it is necessary for us to have stiffer laws, my sense is, yes, let's have stiffer laws. But the ones that we have we implemented them? If we have not implemented the current laws we have, the one that prescribed 14 years, the one that prescribed 10 years, and even at state level, those different laws at state level that prescribe different punishments, if we have not, implemented them, then if implementing them, we still realize that, the culture of rape has continued, then we can then say, let's have stiffer laws. So yes, I am for stiffer laws, but I am also in that same breath calling that we should, to a large extent, can we indeed have implementation of those laws? When we came out yesterday to do those marches that we had in Lagos, Abuja, and all of those places, one major thing that we called for and that we are still calling for is the declaration of the state of emergency on sexual and gender-based violence. And the reason for a state of emergency is not just because we have considered rape to be an endemic situation. We are dealing with, in a pandemic, we are dealing with, a situation where even geographically we have unique issues affecting women and girls in this situation. We call for that so that there can be closer attention to the issue of sexual and gender-based violence. It's also the same reason why we called that there has to be the domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, as well as the domestication of the Child Rights Act in all of the states in Nigeria. Why? When you look at the criminal code or the penal code, for instance, there are lacunas in it. And it aligns with what my co-panelist has said earlier, which I totally agree with, that boys and men are also being abused. But when you look at the criminal code, for instance, it focuses only on the sexual abuse that is perpetrated by a man to a woman. But when we now have sexual abuse being perpetrated on men, for instance, on boys, for instance, in states that have not domesticated the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, then it becomes difficult to get full justice. Another thing that, we called for yesterday and we keep calling for is that we want the establishment of sexual assault referral centers, in every state. And that should be backed by, funding. Why do we want that as part of the way forward? It's so that people can have where to go to. There can be a center or centers that deal with sexual abuse. I would close my thoughts by saying that another thing that we requested for is that there has to be criminalization of state-led prosecution and state-led prosecution of sexual and gender-based violence cases. One of the reasons why this has continued is because even for victims of sexual abuse, when you go to the police station and then it eventually gets to the court, it can take 10 years, it can take 5 years. Or sometimes there can be corruption that happens that frustrates the whole thing. Busola Dakulo's case is a case in point. She did a 1-year report of what happened, and you could see this different maneuvering that is going on. So I think that we need to strengthen existing systems.
All right.
We need to strengthen family support units and make sure that even when sexual abuses are perpetrated by heavily powered people or state actors, heavily powered people like the man in Kogi State, the Commissioner for Water Resources, who is frustrating justice, when those people are brought to book, the common man would also know that the story is not the same.
All right, and that's a fine place to leave it right now, Buki. But, you know, from what she said so far, Uzonna, domestication rather of the Child Rights Act is one sure way of nipping this issue in the bud. But what are your final thoughts on this matter?
My final thought remains that we can have the best of laws. If they are not implemented, it's as good as not having any. We have laws in the states currently. How many states have been able to prosecute 1 or 2 cases take it to logical conclusion without interference? She made reference of a situation in Kogi State where a high-profile person in the society is alleged to be truncating the process. And it applies in different areas where even the family influence comes in and then begins to turn the process of justice against the original issue. So all of these are situations confronting us, but there's need to have a reorientation of the populace to understand that a woman deserves to be respected for who she is. A man or a boy deserves to be respected for who he is. And then we need to also look in the direction of mental health. Because some of these people that violate small children, you begin to wonder, somebody who is violating a 3-year-old baby girl, what is he looking for? If you want to answer that question, you may begin to look in the direction of mental health. And so all of these things are
interwoven.
Yes, they are interwoven, and we need to look at them holistically before we could get a solution to the problem confronting us now. Right
now, Bukola, final thoughts. What is your advice to parents who've been affected by this dastardly act? What's your advice?
Be for them first to take heart, for them to know that Nigerians are behind them. We are calling for justice on their behalf. We consider the unfortunate situation that has happened to them an entry point to causing lasting change. But they should know that Nigerians love them, and we would keep pushing. And we hope that the law enforcement agents will not let this sweep under the carpet. The case of Uwa, Tina, Jennifer, Barakat must actually be concluded reasonably.
Indeed, I share
and
the same
within
sentiments
reasonable
as well.
time.
Buki Shonibara, thank you very much for your insights on this segment of the show. I'll also thank Uzonna Onoye for his insights. We'll still have him on, still ahead on the program. It's now 100 days plus since Nigeria recorded the index case of coronavirus in the country at a time when the world became connected in isolation with more than 12,000 cases recorded. Concerns are high as life is almost back to normal for many amidst the ongoing ease of lockdown. Stay with us.